I was at brunch the other day, classic Sunday scenario, and the conversation turned to dating.
Oh, cool.
But it wasn't the usual, dating apps are a nightmare thing. It was different. A friend of mine who's dated men her whole life, she just casually mentioned she's sort of done.
Done with dating.
No, not becoming a nun done. She's just like shifting her focus and looking at women.
It's happening everywhere, isn't it? Feels like the cultural algorithm has just shifted.
Exactly. And then I go home, I open social media, and it's the same thing. TV dramas, TikTok, news articles. There is this huge buzz about modern women who previously identified as straight, entering same-sex relationships later in life. And the commentary is always so dismissive. People call it a trend, like it's a fashion choice.
Right, the political lesbianism argument, which is such a reductive way to look at human connection.
It feels patronizing, honestly, like, oh, you're just doing this to be cool. But today we're actually looking at a report from URBT News. It's called Modern Women and the Shifting Landscape of Same-Sex Partnerships. And spoiler alert, it is not just a trend.
Not at all. It's what I'd call a convergence. You don't get a shift this massive just because it's trendy.
Convergence.
Yeah, you get it because these massive tectonic plates, we're talking culture, economics, psychology, they're all shifting at the same time.
Okay, let's unpack this because I really want to move past the hot takes. If this isn't some sudden whim, what is it? Is it a slow burn that we're just now noticing?
Well, think of it less as a sudden shift and more like a release of pressure. For a long time, there were these very rigid structures holding women in specific relationship models.
Right.
No, those structures are cracking. We're going to look at 3 areas today. The push away from heterosexual norms, the economic freedom that actually allows for real choice, and the digital revolution that changed how we see ourselves.
I like that roadmap. Okay, so let's start with the push, because I think this is the part that gets the most heat online. The report mentions mismatched expectations.
Which is a very polite way of saying it.
A very polite way of saying women are tired.
It's a diplomatic phrase, yes. But the data behind it is pretty stark. I mean, when you look at the research on heterosexual dating dynamics right now, you see this profound level of frustration among women.
And not just about bad dates.
No, it's a fundamental clash, a clash between the lives modern women are actually leading and the roles they are still somehow expected to play at home.
This is the dual burden thing, right?
Exactly. We have a generation of women raised to be ambitious. They're getting degrees, climbing corporate ladders, starting businesses. They're operating at peak efficiency in the workforce. But when they come home, the expectation for domestic management hasn't really shifted to match their professional lives.
It's the second shift. You crush it at the office, then you come home and you're the project manager for the household. Dishes, scheduling, emotional regulation.
And that is the key.
Yeah.
Emotional regulation. The report highlights that women often feel they're shouldering the mental load for both partners.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. Every relationship has chores, right? Every relationship is work. Is it really that different with women? Or is this just a grass is greener fantasy? Because I'm sure same-sex relationships have dirty dishes too.
That's a crucial question.
Yeah.
And you're right, the dishes don't wash themselves no matter the gender. But the perception noted in the source material is all about egalitarianism.
Okay.
It's not that the work disappears, it's about how the work gets assigned. In many heterosexual dynamics, the default script is still woman manages, man assists.
I'll help you with the laundry, like it's a favor.
Precisely. Whereas the source suggests that in same-sex partnerships between women, that default script, it just doesn't exist. There's no historical precedent of the wife does this, the other wife does that.
So you're forced to communicate.
You have to. You have to negotiate the partnership from scratch.
So it's less about the chores and more about the lack of weaponized incompetence.
It's about the absence of what the report calls uneven emotional support. Many women say that in relationships with men, they often feel like the emotional anchor. So when they look at relationships with other women, they see, or at least they expect to see, a partner who's been socialized in a similar way, someone who has the same emotional vocabulary.
That's a powerful draw. If you're exhausted by explaining why you're exhausted, finding someone who just gets it without needing a PowerPoint presentation, that must feel like, I don't know, taking off a tight shoe.
A release of pressure.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. The choice to explore same-sex relationships isn't just about sexual attraction in a vacuum. For some, it's a rational response to the burnout of traditional gender roles.
They're prioritizing emotional intelligence.
And communication qualities, The source notes they are finding more reliably outside of heterosexual pairings.
But, and here's where it gets really interesting to me, you can be as burned out as you want. You can be totally done with the man-child dynamic. But if you can't pay your rent, you're stuck.
And this brings us to the structural backbone of this entire phenomenon, the economic shift.
Right. I feel like we don't talk about this enough when we talk about romance. We like to think love is this pure, magical thing that just floats above our bank accounts.
But they're basically glued together, inextricable. If you want to understand why this is happening now, you have to look at history.
Okay.
For centuries, and really up until quite recently, marriage wasn't primarily about a soul connection. It was an economic survival strategy.
For sure. I remember reading that women couldn't even get credit cards in their own names until the mid-70s in the U.S.
Exactly. So historically, if a woman wanted access to capital, to housing, social standing, even just basic security, she needed a husband. It wasn't a choice. It was a necessity.
So compulsory heterosexuality wasn't just a social norm. It was
an economic mandate.
So you could have had women in the 1950s or 60s who felt the same burnout or even felt attraction to women, but what were they going to do?
They would have had to accept poverty or social ostracization. The cost of exiting that system was just too high.
But now.
But look at the data in our source now. We see rising rates of college enrollment for women outpacing men in many areas. We see increased entrepreneurial participation, independent access to housing.
The survival element is gone. A woman today can buy her own house, fund her own retirement.
She doesn't need a provider.
Right.
And here's the so what insight from all of this. When financial security no longer relies on a male partner, the filter for selecting a partner changes completely.
You're not looking for a resource anymore.
You're looking for a companion.
That actually blows my mind a little bit. It means we're moving from married for survival to relationship for self-actualization.
Correct. Women are now unconstrained by that economic pressure. And this allows for what we might call authentic selection.
Authentic selection.
Yeah. If you remove the need for a paycheck, you can prioritize desire, identity. And for a significant number of women, when that economic noise finally quiets down, they realize their authentic selection points toward other women.
It's like the economy was a noise machine drowning out their internal voice. And now that it's off, they can actually hear themselves think.
That's a beautiful metaphor. But, hearing that voice is one thing. Understanding what it's saying is another. And that is where the 21st century really diverges from the past. We have to talk about the internal shift and the digital age.
This part of the report really stood out to me. It talks about fluidity. The survey data suggests that a lot of these women aren't saying, oh, I was living a lie my whole life. They're saying, I'm evolving.
Yes. The rigid boxes of gay versus straight are just dissolving for many people. The data indicates that women are more and more likely to describe their orientation as fluid.
Which allows for reevaluation later in life.
Right, often in their late 20s and 30s.
Which brings up the late bloomer phenomenon. I've seen this mentioned a lot. Why the late 20s and 30s? Is it just because they're finally settled or something?
I think it connects back to what we were just discussing. In your early 20s, there's often a script.
Oh, yeah.
You go to school, you start a career, maybe you look for a husband because that's what you're supposed to do. By your 30s, maybe you've ticked those boxes. You have the job. Maybe you even had the marriage. And you realize, I'm still not happy.
The checklist didn't work.
The checklist failed to deliver the fulfillment it promised. And this is where the internet becomes absolutely critical. A generation ago, if a woman in her 30s started questioning her sexuality, where would she turn?
Nowhere good. She'd probably feel like she was the only person in the world going through it. Maybe, check out a book from the library and hide it under her coat.
It would have been an incredibly isolating, even shameful experience. But today, the digital infrastructure has completely changed the game. The report emphasizes how online forums, social platforms like TikTok or Reddit,
they provide instant community.
Without the stigma, you can literally go online right now and find a subreddit with 50,000 women saying, I thought I was straight until I was 34, and here is exactly what happened.
That validation must be transformative and has to accelerate that self-discovery process.
It does. It turns a vague, confusing feeling into a recognized identity. You aren't broken. You are part of a community. The source calls this the digital tribe.
It provides a vocabulary.
Exactly. A vocabulary for feelings that previously had no name.
It's the difference between stumbling around in a dark room and having someone hand you a flashlight and say, hey, we're all over here.
And that flashlight is powered by broader cultural visibility. We can't ignore the role of media in all of this.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about the media landscape 20 years ago versus now. It used to be that if there was a gay character, their entire storyline was about being gay.
And usually suffering for it.
Right.
Now, we see visibility everywhere. News, entertainment, politics. The source notes that this visibility reduces social stigma, which in turn empowers women to question rigid norms instead of just defaulting to them. It validates the option.
You can't be what you can't see. And now you can see it everywhere, but
Yeah.
I want to pause here because I feel like we're painting a very rosy picture. Women have money, the internet is great, everyone is happy, but there has to be a catch.
There is a significant caveat, and the report is careful to include it.
Which is?
Safety.
Right. This isn't happening everywhere all at once.
No. This phenomenon is heavily tied to specific environments. The report notes that this trend tracks very closely with things like legal recognition, marriage, equality, and just general social safety.
So if you're living in a place where coming out could mean losing your job or your housing or your physical safety, you aren't going to have the luxury of exploring your fluidity.
Exactly. Maslow's hierarchy of needs comes into play here. You can't focus on self-actualization and romantic exploration if your basic safety is threatened. The expert note in our source really emphasizes this trend is not uniform globally. In places where LGBTQ+ identities are criminalized or heavily stigmatized, we just don't see these same patterns.
Not because the feelings aren't there,
but because the cost of acting on them is still far too high.
So in a way, this whole trend is actually a privilege check. It shows us what happens when you finally remove the element of fear.
That's the crux of it. It's a convergence of safety, means, and opportunity.
So let's try to pull all this together because we've covered a lot of ground. We have the push, the exhaustion with the second shift, and the unequal emotional burdens. We have the means, the economic independence that makes marriage optional, not necessary.
Right.
And we have the catalyst, the internet and the culture showing women that there's another way.
When you stack them all up like that, the trend argument just seems kind of silly, doesn't it? It's not a fad. It's a structural correction.
A correction. I really like that word. It implies that what we had before was incorrect, or at least artificial.
I think that is the implication. The report synthesizes this as a really complex convergence. It's not about women switching sides for the sake of it.
No.
It represents a fundamental reshaping of how we even understand attraction and partnership. It's about women discovering what genuinely fulfills them.
Rather than just doing what they were told would fulfill them.
Exactly. Whether that's an expression of an inherent orientation that was always there, or a response to gendered expectations, or most likely a messy mix of both. It's rewriting the script of modern relationships.
It really makes you look at the past differently. I mean, how many traditional marriages in history were actually just two people doing what they had to do to survive?
That is the big, uncomfortable question history leaves us with.
And that leads me to the thought I want to leave our listeners with today. We spent this whole time talking about external factors, money, laws, the internet, chores, but think about the implication of that.
It leads to a very provocative hypothesis.
If economic necessity and social stigma were the main things keeping the quote-unquote traditional family structure in place for centuries, are we only now, right now in the 2020s, just beginning to see what natural human attraction actually looks like?
It's the cage metaphor. If you keep a bird in a cage for 100 years, you assume it just likes to sit on a perch.
Yeah.
It's only when you finally open the door that you see where it actually wants to fly.
And maybe for a lot more women than we ever thought, that flight path isn't leading towards men.
It is certainly looking that way.
Well, that is a massive idea to chew on for the rest of the week. Huge thanks to the team at URBT News for the report that kicked this all off.
Indeed. It is a vital conversation to have.
And thank you for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.